Fjordhaven, a small village nestled on the banks of a glacier, where the cold wind seemed to blow away all emotions. But it is here, in the midst of a seemingly endlessly quiet scene, that a story is written, touching the hearts of those who have experienced darkness and yearn to find the light again. Clara, a young baker, did not expect that her fateful step home in the sunset that day would take her on a challenging yet magical journey. Meeting Frost, a lonely husky with eyes that seem to contain an untold story. Clara is not only drawn into the deep mystery of the old well, but also has to face her own fear, doubt, and compassion. When Frost's sad eyes meet Clara's, you can feel a strong urge, a question echoing from deep within the heart. Are we brave enough to listen to the call of lost souls? And above all, do you dare to awaken the power that lies dormant within you to face the darkness? Clara and Frost's story is a journey to find meaning in seemingly simple things, an invitation for you to discover the light within yourself. But what is the secret hidden at the bottom of the ancient well? Why does Frost continue to protect it? And what miracle awaits at the end of this journey? Before we continue the story, where did you find this? Was it an introduction, or was it curiosity that brought you here? Share with us in the comments. And if you want to step into more meaningful stories, click subscribe. Tomorrow, we will bring you a special story that promises to touch your heart. It was dusk in Fjordhaven, a small village nestled between snow-capped mountains and crystal-clear glaciers. Clara, a young baker, had just closed her shop after a long day. The wind from the sea was bitingly cold, but Clara felt comforted by the warm scent of fresh bread lingering on her sleeves. She wrapped her scarf tightly around her neck, preparing to return to her small wooden house at the end of the village. As she walked down the stone path, her eyes stopped. Under the pale sunset, right next to the ancient well in the middle of the village, stood a husky with white fur mixed with gray, like the winter moon. It stood motionless, its eyes fixed on the well, its gaze so sad that it sent a chill down Clara's spine. As she approached, its eyes shifted, looking straight at her, a deep gaze, as if it wanted to say something, asking for help. Clara stopped. "Who left you here?" She spoke softly, but her voice faded into the cold air. Frost, the name she had unconsciously given the dog, did not move. Only his tail flicked slightly, but his eyes did not leave hers. A strange feeling crept over Clara as some invisible thread connected her to the creature. She stepped closer, peering down into the well. The darkness below was thick and deep. Clara heard something, or was it just her imagination? It was a faint, indistinct sound, like a distant moan. She raised her head to look at Frost. He did not bark. He stood still, his ears erect, his eyes glowing in the darkness. Clara's mind told her to continue her journey home, but her heart did not. That feeling, an inexplicable urge, held her back. "Is there someone down there?" Clara whispered, her hands tightening around the scarf. Frost crouched low, as if he were holding his breath for her answer. The wind blew through the village, creating a rustling sound like the whisper of the mountains. Clara felt a chill run down her spine, but it wasn't because of the weather. Frost's eyes, silent but full of urgency, seemed to say, "Take a closer look." And at that moment, Clara knew she couldn't leave. After the first night of seeing Frost, Clara returned to her cottage, but her mind was still haunted by the dog's sad eyes and the faint whining from the well. She told herself that it was probably just her imagination. But no matter how hard she tried to fall asleep, the image of the dog standing in the dark, silent as a gatekeeper, kept appearing in her mind. The next morning, Clara woke up with a clear decision. She had to go back. Carrying a paper bag of fresh bread in her hand, she slowly walked down the stone path leading to the old well. And sure enough, Frost was still there, as if he had never left. His fur was wet with dew, and his eyes were sad, but now mixed with a hint of anticipation when he saw Clara. He stood up, his ears twitching, but he still kept a safe distance. Clara knelt a few steps away from Frost, gently placing the piece of bread on the cold stone floor. "Here, try. I just want to help," she whispered, her voice soft, as if afraid to break the silence. But Frost did not come closer. He just stood there watching her, then turned back to the well, his eyes still fixed on the dark depths. The next day, Clara returned, this time with more food and a small blanket to protect Frost from the cold. She placed the food closer, but Frost only took one step closer, wary as if his every move were being watched. And so, day after day, Clara did not give up. She sat close enough to Frost so that he would not feel threatened, quietly telling him about her life, about the little bakery, about the cold mornings in Fjordhaven, and about the loneliness she kept hidden. And then, one foggy morning, the miracle happened. As Clara put down the food, Frost walked slowly, step by step, until his cold muzzle touched her hand. A warm feeling welled up inside Clara. She carefully reached out, gently touching Frost's thick, snowy fur. It stood still, its eyes no longer fearful, but instead filled with a gleam of trust. From that day on, Frost no longer kept his distance. He began to eat the food Clara brought him, sometimes wagging his tail when she approached. But there was one strange thing. Every time he finished eating, Frost would bring a portion of food to the edge of the well and push it down with his snout. Clara watched in silence, her heart filled with curiosity and an indescribable emotion. Clara knew that, for Frost to open up completely, she would need more. One evening, as darkness fell over Fjordhaven, Clara brought a flashlight and knelt beside Frost, trying to peer deeper into the well. Frost stood close to her, but when she leaned in, he growled in warning. Clara stopped, holding up her hand to show that she had no intention of intruding. "Okay, I understand," she whispered. "Are you protecting something? Or someone?" Frost looked at Clara silently, as if considering something. After a few minutes, he stepped back, giving her some space. Clara realized that this trust was not only the result of patience, but also a lesson in respect. She decided not to try to force it, but to let Frost take the lead. Over the next few days, Frost no longer remained vigilant when Clara looked down the well. Instead, he began to circle her, as if to protect her. Every time Clara sat down by the well, Frost lay beside her, his eyes watching for any movement around them. Clara felt as if an invisible string had formed between them, a connection that transcended words. And then, one night when the moon was full, when Clara put her ear to the well to listen more closely, she heard the sound again, more clearly than ever. It was a faint, urgent cry, like a cry for help from another world. Clara turned to Frost and whispered, "There's someone down there, right?" Frost stood up, barking softly, as if to confirm her words. Its eyes sparkled in the moonlight, full of hope and responsibility. Clara understood that the moment had come. The mystery that Frost had protected for so long was finally about to be revealed. That night, the moonlight flooded the village of Fjordhaven, bathing everything in a shimmering silver. Clara stood by the well, her heart pounding as faint sounds echoed from the depths. Frost stood beside her, his eyes urging her to act. In the quiet of the village, the urge became too strong to deny. Clara knew she had to do something. Without hesitation, she ran home, hurriedly grabbed a flashlight and rope, and called the local rescue team. The rescue team leader, Mr. Eirik, a man with ice-white hair and a strong voice, arrived shortly after hearing Clara's urgent explanation. "An animal in the well? Are you sure?" he asked, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. "It's more than just an animal," Clara insisted, her eyes shining. "I don't know what it is, but I'm sure Frost is protecting it, and I can't leave it alone." Soon, the entire Fjordhaven rescue team had gathered at the well. Powerful flashlights shone into the shaft, revealing a narrow, dark space, deep and dark. Clara stood beside Frost, her hand on his head as if to reassure them both. She felt the tension spreading, but Frost's gaze remained steady, as if to say, "Trust me." Eirik tightened the rope around himself and slowly lowered himself into the shaft, his flashlight glinting off the cold stone walls. "I hear it," he called out from below. "There's something. I see it." The team held their breaths. Clara clenched her fists, her eyes fixed on the well. Frost stood beside her, his ears erect, his eyes fixed on the darkness below. A few minutes later, a faint cry rang out, but this time it was clearer. And then Eirik shouted, "It's a fox cub! No, there's more than one! I need more rope to pull them up." Everyone joined forces. One by one, the little foxes were pulled up, trembling. Their white fur was caked in mud, their eyes dazed but still alive. Clara gasped at the sight of them, a feeling of excitement filling her heart. 1, 2, 3. 6 little snow foxes were rescued from the cold darkness. When the last fox was pulled up, a chorus of cheers rang out. Clara knelt beside Frost, patting him on the head. "You did it," she whispered, her voice choked. Frost didn't bark, but his bright eyes said it all. Relief, joy, gratitude. The little foxes, weak but still alive, were wrapped in small blankets. Eirik, with large but gentle hands, examined each one. "They'll be fine," he said, smiling reassuringly at Clara. "Without you and this dog, they wouldn't have a chance." Everyone stood still, watching Frost. A stray dog, living on the run, but with a heart bigger than anyone else. He not only protected, but also shared his food, using everything he had to sustain the lives of the little creatures. As the rescue team prepared to take the foxes to the animal care center, Clara looked at Frost. "We're done here, but this story is just beginning," she said. Frost looked at her, his tail wagging slightly in agreement. She felt a strong, deep connection that transcended all boundaries. When the whole village of Fjordhaven woke up the next morning, the story of Frost and the snow foxes had spread quickly. Everyone was moved by the dog's courage and kind heart. Frost was no longer a nameless stray dog. He had become a symbol of kindness and sacrifice in the eyes of everyone. Clara decided to take Frost home. When she opened the door, Frost walked in, his eyes filled with gratitude. Clara's heart was warmed by his presence. She knew that, with Frost by her side, her life would never be the same. And so, in the small village of Fjordhaven, amidst the cold snow and ice, a story of kindness, sacrifice, and friendship was written. The story of Frost and Clara, of little snow foxes, and of the belief that in the darkness, light always exists. Frost quickly became a part of Clara's life, bringing with him a light she didn't know she had lost. On the first day home, Frost walked everywhere, exploring every corner as if to make sure this would be his forever home. When he finally curled up at the foot of the fireplace, Clara knew she had made the right decision. The snow foxes were also well cared for at the animal center. A week later, when their health had recovered, Clara was invited to send them back to the wild. Frost went with her. For the first time in her life, Clara saw the joy shining in Frost's eyes as the little foxes ran towards the icy forest. She realized that Frost had not only saved those little creatures, but also saved her, pulling her out of the cold loneliness she had been feeling for so long. From that day on, Clara and Frost were not just companions, but two perfect pieces. Every morning, Frost would lie by the bakery, his ears perked up whenever someone visited, becoming a familiar sight in Fjordhaven. Customers would stop to pet him and tell their stories, and somehow his presence would make everyone feel more at peace. But it was Clara who changed the most. Thanks to Frost, she found meaning in giving, in an invisible but profound connection to everything around her. Her walks through the icy forest were no longer a solitary journey. Every step was a reminder that hope could be reborn even in the darkest corners. The story of Frost and the foxes spread, becoming an inspiration not only in Fjordhaven, but far beyond this small village. Clara, who once thought her life revolved around loaves of bread, now realized that there was more to life. And in her heart, Frost was more than just a dog. He was the embodiment of rebirth, of light after a long night. Clara smiled every time she looked at Frost, her ears perked up, her eyes shining, as if reminding her, rebirth doesn't come from big things, but from small moments where kindness is spread. And so, in the cold land of Fjordhaven, Clara and Frost continue to write a story of hope and love, a story as alive as the fire that burns forever in the ice. The story of Frost and Clara is not just about a brave dog or a woman learning to love, but also a reminder that kindness, patience, and connection can work wonders. Whether you are facing darkness or loss, remember that hope is always present. Sometimes it is hidden in a look in the eye, an outstretched hand, or a simple moment of sharing. We appreciate you listening to this story. Please spread Frost's spirit by like and share the story to help it reach more hearts. And don't forget to comment an inspirational quote from the story. Let the world know that with just a small act, we can brighten someone's life, including our own.